Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maat.
A BB Fahodie, a BB Tumi. Peace to all of my thinkers, my truth speakers, and my truth seekers. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Maat. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight, I have with me another powerful guest, but he is no stranger to the community, and he is my beloved elder, Baba Olatunji MWAMBA. How are you doing tonight, Baba?
I am well. How are you? And thank
Baba,
you for having me. Baba,
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Family, right now, take a moment out to thumb up this video. Thumb up this video. You know how YouTube works, family. They work based on algorithms. So the more you engage with a video, the more you engage with the video, the more that it pops up in the search engines. Also, family, take a moment out to share this video. Baba Olatunji is going to be dropping a lot of information tonight. We're here to talk about his book, An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQ organization and their agenda, the conversation that no one wants to have. So family, sharing is caring. So please help me get this information out, or help us get this information out to the people. Also, family, if you're watching this broadcast on Facebook, be sure to head on over to YouTube, type in Dr. Maat, hit the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you will be notified. Also, family, I've created a Truth to Power Talk playlist on my channel. I've brought in all of the greats. Dr. Malefe Asante, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Darity, Dr. Julianne, Professor James Smalls, Dr. Kaba Kamene, Baba. He's been on about 3 or 4 times. So I brought him on, Dr. Rick Kittles and Dr. Gina Page from African Ancestry. Just last night, I had a sister, Ezeli Donto. And I may have butchered her name because Dr. Maat is from Baltimore, so we have that lazy tongue. But she came on yesterday and she gave us firsthand information on what's going on with Haiti, because we over here in the U.S. and we're getting their narrative, on CNN and MSNBC. And so she gave us a perspective on what's happening in Haiti. And so, family, be sure to check that out. Also, join me back here on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Read Book Club. We're reading a book called The Cost of Being African American by Thomas Shapiro. And it's a pretty good book. Very, very informative. We just had our first discussion last Sunday. So this Sunday, we're discussing chapter 1. And so even if you don't have the book, family, just tune in because you'll take something away from the discussion. So, Baba.
Yes.
Let's jump right on in. I see a lot of people are in the building. Iwa Pelly Movement. I see you on Instagram a lot, family. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. CJ Young, you were like one of the first people in the building. Of course, my number one moderator on YouTube, the New Black World Order. He's in the building. One of the Warrior Sophos, the Melanated Cafe. He's in the building. And the sisters, they come through. You have a beautiful mind, Sister Tamika, Sister Nia Muhammad. So all the sisters are in the building. Dayo Nature, all of the sisters are in the building because they say, Baba, when you teach a man, and you teach an individual, but when you teach a woman, you teach the nation. Ashe. So I love it. We are talking. I don't know, it's going in and out. And it seems like it always happens, Baba, when we have conversations like this. When we have conversations like this is when the internet wants to start acting up on us. But family, tonight we're going to be talking about Baba's book, An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQIA organizations and their agenda. And so, Baba, I just want to start off by saying this. And family, I'm not just telling you, I see you in the chat. You're like, I need to get this book. I'm not just telling you, to get the book and haven't read it. A lot of people hold up books. I've read his book. I'm halfway through it, Baba. I tell you, we call and we discuss. I'm on page 120. And what Baba Olatunji helped me to realize, I remember when years ago, I used to hear people link homosexuality to pedophilia. And I didn't understand it. I said, wait a minute. Homosexuality involves two consenting adults, right? And pedophilia is when you have an adult pry on a young child. But when I read his book, An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQ, so many letters, LGBTQIA organizations, when I read this book, Baba Olatunji helped me realize there is a link. And Baba, I would like for you to talk about what they were asking for back in 1973 in the Gay Rights on the Gay Rights March on Washington. I want you to talk about what they were asking for, Baba, because it talked about pedophilia in that. So, Baba, could you please break that down to us?
Well, one of the things that they did was they had something. It actually was in 1972, and it was held in Chicago. I believe in February of 1972. Okay. And out of this meeting, there were a bunch of organizations that came together. February 19th, it was a National Coalition of Gay Organizations met at Amadaye Avenue at the United Methodist Church in Chicago. An invitation was set out for 495 homosexual organizations across the U.S. to come and prepare a gay stance for the 1972 elections. About 200 individuals showed up from 18 states, representing 85 organizations. And out of this came the 1972 Gay Rights Platform. And they have a list of demands that they wanted instituted. And they have been working to institute these demands since 1972. Now, if you weren't born or aware in 1972, you probably would not understand the importance of this. However, in 1972, I was 18 years old. So the world was vastly different than it is today. I'm 67 today. So the way we viewed homosexuality in the Black community was like I said, vastly different than it is today. In any event, when you read the 1972 Gay Rights Platform, they had state demands and federal demands. And in the federal demands, one of the things that they wanted done was they wanted to abolish all laws governing the age of sexual consent. Now, a question should immediately come to your mind. Since they always say that homosexuality is about what two consenting adults do in the privacy of their own bedroom. So my question is, what would that have to do with abolishing all laws governing the age of sexual consent? Why would they need to do that? Are they, so for me, the conclusion should be clear. They want to have sexual access to our children.
Well, Baba, that's a fact, because in California they passed a law a few years back that legalized child prostitution, and so that was passed a few years ago in California. I remember calling my cousin who lives in Hayward, and I said, "What's going on out there in California? You all are legalizing child prostitution." So you're right, and so that you said that was one of the things that they asked for on the 1972 Gay Bill of Rights, and I believe did they also ask for it? I think they asked for it again when they did the Gay Rights the Gay Rights March on Washington, 1993, and so they also again, Baba, asked for.
They did.
The age of consent.
In fact, it was the first thing. It was number one on the list in 1993. It was number one on the list. It says changes age of consent laws to allow sex with youth, repeal
Mm.
all laws, sodomy laws, and legalize all forms of sexual expression. And this is the 1993 Gay Rights March on Washington.
Mm. So,
So,
Baba, people can kill that noise. People can kill that noise when they say there's no agenda. And when you were here for part one of this discussion, you said, well, every organization has an agenda. What organization doesn't? So remember when people say, oh, there's no gay agenda, and some people were in denial of that. But then the question became, well, what organization? Every organization has an agenda. That's why the organization is formed, right, to achieve
exactly,
goals. It's so absolutely.
Well, for me, that what I would, whenever I hear somebody say that there's no agenda, the first question that I ask them is this: do you actually know the correct definition of what an agenda is? You'd be surprised how many people don't know the answer to that question. And so when you make them have to think about that question, and then you provide the correct answer, which I did in my book, which is a group of people who come together, organize around stated goals and objectives, and they set out to accomplish those goals and objectives. And they do that through an agenda. And they set out the agenda of what it is they want to accomplish, and they establish some strategies for how they want to accomplish whatever it is that they've come together to accomplish. And so when I hear people say that there's no LGBTQIA agenda, I know that that person is ignorant of what is actually going on.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, Baba. And so again, like I said, when I used to hear people talk about, and thank you so much, Love Me Fro. Thank you so much. She said, I hear all of you. Thank you. Because someone in the chat said we were breaking up, but she said we're good. But Baba, that's when I realized the linkage, because initially, like I said, I didn't, people would link homosexuality and pedophilia. They would link it, but I didn't understand why people would link it. But after reading your work and understanding that since 1972, the LGBT has been fighting for the age of consent, sexual consent, to be eradicated. And I'm like, okay, they want sexual. So it does, that's what it is. They want sexual access to children, and they want to do it legally. And to be honest with you, Baba, just when you read the history of European folks, they've always had pedophilia in their culture. Also in your book, Baba, you talked about, tell me about the Greeks, when you talked about the little boys that would have to go and stay with the Greeks. So it's always been a part of European culture, pedophilia, but can you kind of dive into that?
It's always been a part of their culture. If you read the Symposium by Plato, he states it right in his book. Let me see if I can read the quote, because I sometimes I sometimes I forget it, and sometimes I remember it.
It's okay, Baba.
But the quote is it's very clear what he says in the quote. Give me a second, let me find it, because it's a very important quote. Where is it?
I think it's in. Hold on. I know it's not in chapter 1.
Now, it's in chapter. I'm looking for it now.
Yeah, where it talks about Greek pedestry. I think it talks about that around page 34. 30.
It's in 36. It says, it is assumed without argument that pederasty alone can satisfy man's highest and noblest aspirations, and the love between a man and a woman, when spoken of at all, is altogether inferior. A purely physical impulse whose sole object is procreation.
What's the definition of pedestry, Baba?
Pedestry is a grown man having sex with a young boy. And so they're saying right here that it is assumed without argument that pederasty alone can satisfy a man's highest and noblest aspirations, not the love between a man and a woman. They're talking about the love between a man and a boy. It's
So like you
crazy.
said, Bob, it's crazy. It's always been a part of their culture. Bob, go to page 42.
Always.
Let's move into
Mhm.
Rome. Talk about that, Bobby,
Mhm.
how it's also in ancient Rome. I actually have it underlined on page 42, but dive
Okay.
into that, Baba. Mhm.
Well, in Rome, the attitudes were pretty much the same. The only difference was uh they seem to have looked at it from the vantage point that uh it was a power relationship. Like if you were a slave in Rome, you had no rights. And the Roman citizen had all the rights. And so the Roman citizen, if you were his slave, he had the right to sodomize you at will. Just to brutally do whatever he chose to do. Now, according to the Roman edict, the Roman citizen was supposed to be the on the top and the slave or the other person on the bottom. If it was discovered that the Roman citizen was on the bottom, he could actually lose his citizenship. It was very frowned
Mm.
upon. Now, the thing is that whether my own Jegna, his name was Bilal Opio Abba, extremely wise brother, and he had a statement that he made that I memorized in regards to this. And he said this to me probably around 1975, 76. He said, when people start talking about, top and bottom, he said, look, and he was real mad. He was a real matter of fact brother. He said, look, it don't matter whether you're pitching or catching, you're playing baseball. You know what I mean? In other words, so when I hear these people try to rationalize how the participants participate in this insanity, it really doesn't matter. Both of y'all are gay. Both of y'all are homosexual. I don't like to use the word gay because gay is another one of those trick words. See, and that's the other thing. If I may, just for a minute.
Absolutely. And I just want to
These words that we see keep coming into our vocabulary. They're being brought into the discussion by the LGBTQ organizations. Even that is a part of their agenda. So when you hear gender fluidity, homophobia,
Baba, you're moving a whole
transphobia.
lot, Baba. You're moving a whole lot, and it
Okay.
looks a little blurry on my end. But go ahead.
Okay. When you hear these terms, homophobia, transphobia, gender fluidity, uh, you know, all these crazy terms. These are terms that come directly from the LGBTQ organizations. These terms are designed as a part of their agenda to do what? Create more confusion.
Yeah, like the new term binomial. Now you have people saying
Right.
I'm
Binary,
binomial. But yeah,
non-binary, and
yeah,
all that.
there it is. That's what it is. Non-binary.
Right.
That's what it
Yeah.
is. Not binomial.
Non-binary and cisgender and all this. So all of these terms come from them. And now what they're doing is they are convincing us that we need to start applying these terms with us. What we don't understand is that these are discussions that they have amongst themselves. That doesn't mean that we have to accept their definitions of things. We should be using the English language. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When we start talking about homophobia, the first thing that one must do in understanding the term, first off, it's a contrived term. It comes directly from them, and the term is a combined term. So the first thing we need to do is deal with the suffix. What is a phobia? So when we deal with the phobia, let's go to my book and go to chapter 8. Because in chapter 8, I define what a phobia is. And I give you, and the definition that I use comes directly out of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Now, it's a clinical term, so it has wound its way up in everyday parlance. but we have to go back to the original definition when we're using terms, because that's the one that is controlling. All other definitions must give way to that original definition if you understand how the English language is used. So a phobia is defined as, let's see here, and this diagnosis is it's called criteria for a specific phobia diagnosis, section 300.29. It's on page 197 of the DSM. It says a fear and a phobia are not the same, so it's important to know the difference. Your therapy cannot use a lab test to make a diagnosis, so she and other mental health professionals consult the DSM, should consult the DSM. This guide provides the specific diagnosis criteria for specific phobias from the American Psychiatric Association. Now, what I want people to understand is this. The term homophobia is not included in the DSM. There is no such term included in it. So that's the first thing. Now, let me get to this. It says an unreasonable, excessive fear. Person exhibits excessive or unreasonable, persistent, and intense fear triggered by a specific object or situation. Immediate anxiety response. And it has a listing, it has about 4 or 5 more other things in here. I'm just giving you some examples. But the term homophobia is not in there. The term phobia is in there. So it means unreasonable or excessive fear. So now you can't take a prefix and put on the suffix to change the meaning of the suffix. The suffix is the controlling aspect of the term. An example would be arachnophobia or claustrophobia. Phobia is still the controlling aspect of the term. Claustro meaning you hate being closed up, right? Closed in a small space. Arachnophobia, afraid of having an unreasonable fear of what? Spiders. So the controlling term here is phobia. So what they did was they took homo, added to it, and then start talking about it means hate and all this other unproven, untrue definitions to a term.
Now, and Baba, let me, Bobby, if I may, let me interject. I just, and what I don't like is that when people don't agree, with the lifestyle, that word has now been weaponized. It's, it's kind of like your homophobia, just because a person is. So like you said, a phobia is an excessive fear of something, right? And so that doesn't correlate with somebody that just says, hey, I disagree. You get what I'm saying? It's not the same thing. And so what I've noticed is that people get dismissed as homophobia, just like they do with Black women. They'll say, if a Black woman brings up her grievances, and maybe she may be passionate about it, but then they'll label her as angry, to kind of just dismiss what she's saying. And so I've noticed that they weaponize these sort of words. But Bob, I really want to go back to my initial point was that that pedophilia has always been in their culture. And so when we talked about Rome, you talked about how, if somebody's pitching a catch and they're still didn't. But I wanted to dive into page 42, where it talks about the culture in Rome, and it says it was considered natural and unremarkable for men to be sexually attracted to teenage youths of both sexes, and pederasty was condoned as long as the younger male partner was not a free-born Roman. And so that was the point that I wanted our listeners to understand, is that it's always been that pedophilia has always been. I wanted to connect the 1972 Gay Bill of Rights and the 1993 Gay Rights March on Washington to the history, and to show that this has always been, pedophilia has always been in their culture. And so it's no surprise, Baba, when we hear about incidents involving the Catholic Church and the priests and the altar boys, or even last night, the sister that I brought on, she talked about how the UN, when they went over there to Haiti, that they were over there having sex with the children over there. So it shouldn't be a surprise, when you think about it. Go ahead, Baba.
And you remember just yesterday, earlier when you and I spoke, remember I told you about the United Nations was there having sex with, and she confirmed it. Just
She
when I
confirmed
was
every
watching the program last night, I just talked to her, to Dr. Maat, about that very same thing earlier that day. And
absolutely.
so that's what they do. And the other thing too, that when we start talking about this part of it, is that overwhelmingly the research clearly proves that sexual abuse of children leads to homosexuality in adults.
Well, Baba,
Now,
Nana, Dr. Patricia Newton had over 6,000 cases, and she was in the process. And peace be upon her soul family. She's an ancestor, but she
yes,
said
she is.
that she had so many clients, and she was an African-centered psychiatrist family right here in Baltimore.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
she said that everything that you just said, Baba, when you said that the sexual abuse of children leads to homosexuality, she said that she confirmed that in her clients. She had those 6,000 clients. She said that it got to a point, Baba, when she said when a homosexual would come through the door, she would initially say, have you? Her initial question used to be, have you been hurt before? And, and then she said, but it got to a point where so many of our brothers and sisters, they came through the door and they said, she said it got to a point where she didn't no longer ask them, well, did you? She asked who? And a lot of these people were violated by people they trust, their fathers, their brothers, their uncles, their aunties, close friends of the family, and so, so a lot of them, so some people that are in the life would, that lifestyle, they would get offended at what I'm saying, but the overwhelming number of people who do indulge in the behaviors of the LGBTQIA have admitted that they have experienced sexual trauma. So, Baba, I want to move into another topic, and that is, well, same topic from your book, but we have been seeing on television shows, a lot of LGBTQIA representations. So, for example, I don't know how many of you watch The Chi. I do watch The Chi. I watch The Chi, and so you have some parents, lesbian couple, they're raising a son. There was a sex scene with the Brat a few weeks ago. Not even on The Chi, but if you're watching Power. With Power, you had a lot of LGBTQIA representation there. I know that on the Disney Channel and even on Netflix, a lot of the animations now have LGBTQIA characters. And when I read your book, Baba, you talked about an organization called the GLAAD organization, and how they've been planning on doing this since 1984, family. So, like, Baba, we're just seeing the outcomes of the agenda right now. But this stuff has been planning. They've been planning this for almost 40 years. So, Baba, could you talk about the GLAAD organization? What is the acronym? GLAD. So what does the organization stand for? And could you get into it, Baba?
Organization, it stands for, it was founded in, I believe, 1985. It stands for the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. And one of the first things they did in the early 1987, they persuaded the New York Times to change its editorial policy and begin using the word gay, and to stop using the term homosexual. And so what they've been doing is they've been systematically in media. When we think of media, we think of just maybe newspaper. They've been in print, commercials, television, movies, music videos, anywhere that they can communicate in mass with the population. And they said that they were demanding. It says Gay Pressure Group demands 1 in 5 primetime characters be LGBT by 2025.
And it's happening.
Now, so here's the question. Because what they tried to project is that somehow 1 in 5 is representative of them as far as their percentage of population, right? So the question that I asked was, well, what is the percentage of people who identify as LGBTQ as far back as, and the last Gallup poll was done, I think, in 2011. And when they did the Gallup poll, um, they estimated that 4.5% of the US population identifies as LGBT. Um, GLAD cites a survey it did with Harris that supposedly found that 20% of Americans aged 18 through 34 are LGBT. But the group wants that overrepresentation to double yet again, calling on the industry to ensure that 20% of the series' regular characters on primetime scripted broadcast series are LGBTQ by 2025. Now, they don't even make up 20% of the population. Why are they now garnering 20% of the character representation? I'll tell you why. How many people understand the tactics of subliminal seduction, propaganda, brainwashing, social engineering, and indoctrination? If you understand how that works, and many of us actually don't really understand it, we think we do. If you understand how that works, you understand why that becomes important. Because remember, they're trying to brainwash us into acceptance of this behavior as being natural and normal, when there's nothing natural and normal about it. So the best way to do that is to have these images flashing on the screen constantly. So you see it in commercials. You see, I mean, look at just what 2 weeks ago on, or was it last week on BET? Lil Nas tongue
Lil Nas
kissing
X.
another man.
And Baba,
Lil Nas X.
I'm glad you brought that up, because even gay people were disgusted with what he did, because they were like I'm talking about, there's a lot of videos. There's like this, there's a brother, he's a gay brother. He put out a video. He's a comedian, real big comedian. And he was just like, what's the purpose? You like, I mean, like it got to the point where even gay people, gay men, gay women, they were even upset at what Lil Nas X did on primetime, because they were like, it was unnecessary. It was uncalled for. Like, what was the point of him even, what was the point of him doing it?
The point was to get us to not be shocked by it anymore. Because if you're not shocked, then you won't be in opposition to it. So that was the point. To make you say, okay, that's all right. Let them do what they do. But again, and see, here's another thing. Do we understand that we live in a system of racism, white supremacy, white terrorism, and that the group of people who have formulated this system, which evolved out of our having been kidnapped and brought to the Western Hemisphere and enslaved, do we understand that this system is designed to wipe us out, and that they have been waging war with us for the last 500 years? If we understand that we are at war, then we would understand why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Well, Baba, that's the problem. That's the issue right there. A lot of us don't realize that we're at war, because what they think is they think that war, in order to be at war with someone, someone has to be shooting at you.
Right.
Tanks are rolling down the street, people in uniforms. No, a lot of Black folks are, to be honest with you, Baba, they're very complacent with where we are right now. It's not that many of us who, some of us are, waking up and but it's not that many folks, Baba. A lot of people don't think
we don't
at war at all. I had it before last year, the year before. Last year, the year before. And he said, people are getting degrees, our salaries, so he started, just, I mean, just some nonsense to just basically say that our condition in America has improved, but our ancestors, they were enslaved. We're no longer slaves. And that was his argument.
And
And
who
you
was
know,
it?
Bob, this was a past, I don't even want to call his name on the broadcast, but this, I'll shoot you the
Yeah.
link to the debate. But it was a pastor who was
Okay.
trying to convince me that we've made progress in America. Bob, I want to move into, because I know time is of the essence, another organization within the LGBTQIA organization that is responsible for penetrating the schools. And that organization,
Mm-hmm.
Baba, you start talking about that organization on page
Yeah.
105, the
Uh-huh.
GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educational Network. So, Baba,
Yes.
could you elaborate on what they're doing? Because I had a cousin,
Well,
just before you get into
mhm,
it, hold on, Baba. I had a cousin,
mhm,
and she told me, and she's probably watching, but she told me, she shared with me maybe a year or two ago that she had a young girl in her class. And at the time, my cousin was teaching maybe middle school or high school. I forgot which one. But she said there was a young lady in her class. And so she said she was literally looking at a young lady, but the young lady said, well, I don't identify as a female. I identify as a male. And so I want you to use the pronoun he when you address me. And so my cousin said that by law, according to school policies, she had to call the girl a he. She had to call her by the gender, using the pronouns associated with the gender that she identified
mhm,
with. And so after reading your book, I realized, well, there's an organization called the GLSEN that was behind changing school policies. And so, Baba, let's get into the GLSAN and what their objectives
mhm.
are.
Well, um, it's an organization that was created by a gentleman named Kevin Jennings. Uh, he was the school czar. He was appointed school czar by former President Barack Obama. Kevin Jennings is the founder of the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educational Network. And what they have been doing is going throughout the country to the various public school systems and trying to um, get books into the schools that that are perpetuating homosexuality, pedophilia, uh, and so much more. There, just to give you an example, there is a book that I spoke about. There's several books I talked about that they've been promoting. But they have a website that you can go to that promotes that has all these different books on it. But this particular book really stood out to me. It's called Reflections of a Rock Lobster by Aaron Frick. And on page 13, he says, and I quote, at the age of 6, the author says, he frequently performed fellatio on his fellow first graders in the school restroom, part of a busy homosexual childhood. My sexual exploits with my neighborhood playmates continued. I lived a busy homosexual childhood, somehow managing to avoid venereal disease through all of my toddler years. By first grade, I was sexually active with my friends. In fact, a small group of us regularly met in the grammar school lavatory to perform fellatio on one another. A typical week schedule would be Aaron and Michael on Monday during lunch, Michael and Johnny on Tuesday after school, Fred and Timmy at noon on Wednesday, Aaron and Timmy at school after school on Thursday. None of us ever got caught, but we never worried anyway. We all understood that what we were doing was not to be discussed freely with adults, but we viewed it as a fun sort of confidential activity. None of us had any guilty feelings about it. We figured everyone did it. Why shouldn't we? What kind of sick mind would write this kind of stuff and have this be taught to 6-year olds, first graders? What kind of sadistic, maniacal devil could come up
Hmm.
with some nonsense like this?
Well, Baba, didn't you say that Obama was the person? Did he support this? He supported
Of
this
course he did.
organization. Can you talk
Absolutely
about
he
that?
did.
Can you talk about that, Baba?
Well, Obama supported a whole, I got a whole chapter on Obama in chapter 12. And the chapter is called President Hussein Obama, the best president the LGBTQ ever had, the best friend the LGBTQ ever had. And he, he just he did a lot for them. And so when I ask people, people always say, well, uh, he did this, that, those, or the other for black people. And the question I always ask, what, what can you name one piece of legislation or a presidential executive order that President Obama either sponsored or co-sponsored, or as an executive order that he instituted specifically just for black people?
None. None. He never
But I
did.
can name,
And
but I,
Biden and
right,
Biden didn't either.
no, he didn't. But I can name you things that he did for the LGBTQ. He signed the federal hate crime law. He overturned don't ask, don't tell. He appointed a string of openly LGBTQ ambassadors and officials. He defended the rights of the LGBTQ people fleeing persecution, overseeing the State Department that defends quote unquote equality around the world. He was in the United Nations continuously trying to impose economic sanctions on any nations that refused to accept this insanity and this kind of Euro-Asiatic behavior as being normal in their countries. Obama was doing this. And so now what has happened? Joe Biden has picked up the mantle and started to do the exact same thing. And one of the first things Joe Biden said he would do was what? He said he was going to push the LGBTQ. That is exactly what he has been doing. In fact, he has seemed to his strongest point has been pushing the T word. That's where he's at. See, they done got the LGB part out the way. So his battle is with the T, transsexual. So what he's been doing is pushing the transgender movement. And you see it in everything that he's doing. The deputy of Health and Human Services is named Rachel Levine, a man. And he was so proud to name this Decepticon, that's what I call them, Decepticons, to this particular post. He has issued, as soon as he came into office on the first day, on January the 20th, he issued a presidential executive order in support of him.
Yep.
And Kamala Harris is in lockstep right with him.
Oh yeah.
So
definitely.
if anybody thinks, I have a picture in the book of her at a parade waving the gay flag.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kamala right there.
I have.
She's in line with the whole. She's.
When she was still senator, she supported a California state senator who just got a law passed that would allow for certain pedophiles to not have to register as sex offenders. And she supported this guy who was pushing this law. So I mentioned all of this in the book. This is why one of the things that, yes, I want people to buy the book. The reason I want people to buy the book is because I know how much information I put into the book, and that I know a lot of our people do not fully understand the depth of this war that they've been waging against black people. See, and the thing that black people miss is this. The reason they're waging the war against us, we are the world's last hope. Because overwhelmingly, black people still do not accept that behavior as natural and normal. Now, we ain't going around trying to beat them up necessarily, right? But we don't generally support such behavior because we know it's insane. We know it's insane. What does it do? You know, it's like the whole thing is they are arguing with us about how they get down in the bedroom. And so what they've done is they've tried to make how they get down in the bedroom to be equal to being black. And the oppression that we receive each and every day of our lives living under the system of racism, white supremacy, white terrorism. And then somebody just asked a question about being pro LGBTQ and pro black. There's no
Yeah,
such thing.
no, Bob. He did. That's not what he was saying. He was saying you got folks who are just insisting that it was in African culture. But brother
Oh yeah,
KC, get the book because Baba thoroughly talks about that. And I think is that chapter 1 or chapter 2?
that's chapter
Is there
16 where I talk about African culture. It's chapter 16.
Oh, okay. So that's always there.
Yeah.
All right, Baba.
Yeah.
So family, please check out Baba's book, an African-centered response to the LGBTQIA organizations and their agenda, the conversation that no one wants to have. Baba, before we get out of here, there's another thing that I do want to discuss. I read an article, and it's in my phone, family. I don't have time to look it up, but I did look at the article, and it was a trans person. They would call him a trans man, but it was a trans person. She was, and I probably should have said the T word, just like you, because I know as soon as you say one thing, then the video's gone. But it was a T person, and an article, and it talked about how there's a movement of people who went through the whole gender assignment or gender reassignment process. They're now switching back over to their original gender. And see, that's the part, Baba, that they don't tell us about. They don't tell us about that. They keep pushing it. They keep pushing it and promoting the T, but they never show you the other side of the coin. And that is, I think, Bob, in your book, did you say they're up to 5,000 or 6,000? The movement is 6,000 strong right now.
More than that. It's probably more than that.
Absolutely.
I definitely talked about it in the book. It says thousands who underwent transition surgery for their gender dysphoria now want reversals. And by the way, before we go, people need to understand that transgender people suffer from a mental disorder that is listed in the DSM. It's called gender dysphoria. So what they're trying to do now is to get you to think that people who want to change their gender are normal, when the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders has listed such mental process as a mental disorder. It's in section 302.6 and 302.85, pages 451 through 459 of the DSM. And so how can you say that that's normal and that I should accept that? And then on top of that, the transgender man who's trying to transition into a woman thinks that I have to
but Baba,
have sex with him.
Yeah, but Baba, even beyond that, Baba, I just want to show the logic. So it's like, okay, even just, you just said they suffer from gender dysphoria, but dysphoria, but that's obvious in the fact. So you want me to accept you. It's like you want to be a man, be a woman when the mood fills you. And so what I want people to, this behavior that we're seeing, this movement of people who are now transitioning back to their original gender, to me, that gives further credence that there is, a mental disorder going on. To me, that gives credence to it. It gives credence to it.
Absolutely, it is. And it's just, I think that we need to step back, and we need to, when we see these things coming at us in the media, we need to step back and think carefully, because what I see going on here this, when you was talking about logical, this is what I call illogical logic. That's what this is. This is illogical logic. And so what I want people to do is I want them, you can find me on Facebook under Olatunji MWAMBA, or my other Facebook page, Saber Sarah MWAMBA. And you can get the link to the book. I don't know if you put
Oh no,
the
I
link
was getting ready to say, brother KC, the link to Baba Olatunji's book will be in the description of this video. In fact, as soon as I end the broadcast, I'm just gonna throw all of the links there so you can check it out. All right, Baba. So we're getting ready to head on out of here. Do you have any closing words, Baba, regarding the book, encouraging folks to get your book?
Okay. Well, I'm encouraging every Black person who is sane, rational, and understands the war that we're in and wants to do everything he or she can do to help us win it. My book goes a long way in helping us do that, because there are tools in here that if you're accused of certain things on your job, in certain other places, you would be able to use the definitions in this book to help defend yourself in, say, a court of law. Somebody on the job tried to get you fired because you say, well, I don't agree with homosexuality, and they say you're homophobic. Well, you now have a tool that you can use, because I've clearly gotten into not only who coined the term homophobia, what year it was coined, what was the intent. See, I've done all of the necessary work for our people. The only thing our people need to do is to read this book. And if you read this book, you will see why it was written, how important it is to this discussion. It builds on a long legacy of fighters of this insanity, going back to at least Dr. Francis Quest Welsing, Dr. Mwalimu Baruti, the irritated genius Southeast, Kush, the Black unifier of PKB in DC. These are people who have been out here fighting this insanity for probably, I know at least Kush and the Genie for about 30 years, Baruti probably longer. In fact, Baruti was even fired from Morehouse University because of his stance on this insanity. So, and by the way, Baruti did the foreword for my book. So if anybody doubts the who supports what I've done, these freedom fighters are behind what I did 100%. So I urge everybody to get this book. Trust me when I say, and I'm not bragging, I know I put in a ton of work. There's a ton of information in here. If you read it, you will be a better person and far more aware of what's going on.
All right. Well, Baba, I want to close by saying, family, I always say, when I look at the LGBTQIA organization, they're very organized. And so they're very organized and very strategic in what they do. And I just wish that Black folks would do the same. I wish that we would get organization. I'm sorry. I wish that we would get organized. I'm sorry. I butchered that, family. So they're very organized, right? And so, a lot of people sit, they doing this and they're getting stuff done. They are getting stuff done. I just wish that we would organize and get things done too. All right, Baba. So we're going to get out of here, family. I won't be doing a Truth to Power talk tomorrow, as I will be away. I'm hanging out with the family tomorrow night. So I won't be on tomorrow, but I will be back on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Read Book Club. We're reading The Hidden Cost of Being African American by Thomas Shapiro. The book is phenomenal, family. Even if you don't have the book, please tune in, because you're going to learn something. All right, family. I'll see you on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace and Black Power.
Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maat.MSU.